So again, thank you guys for coming out. Just to give the whole background, like I said, my name is Victor Dandridge, and I am a local self-publisher. I print under my imprint, Vantage In-House Productions. Yay, Vantage In-House. I've been around doing Vantage In-House for, I think this is our 3rd year of publication, and I was very fortunate in that this is my full-time job. So for a lot of us, that is always the goal of ditching the 9-to-5 and doing comic book stuff full-time. Unfortunately, I'm still not quite at the spot where the comics are what float me. I have other projects that allow me to do this, but that's the goal, obviously, is to get to that point. I have a number of titles that I have self-published that I brought in today, just to kind of show what some of my background is under Vantage In-House. This is one of my most popular titles, The Trouble with Love. It's the very first one that I've ever done that was full color through Vantage In-House. First series that we started off with was The Samaritan, which actually we'll be finishing up within the next 2 weeks, which I'm very excited about. It's the first full series that has come out of Vantage In-House. I am very specific when I say out of Vantage In-House and the first things that I've done. The first series that I specifically cut my teeth on, this man can raise his hand and shout out and be all excited, is Hot Shot from Freestyle Comics. Show him, because I see you decked out with it. Mike is the creator and the illustrator for Hot Shot. I did the first 6 issues, learned a lot. Like that was, it was insane. I mean, we're talking, I probably, dare I say it, started writing Hot Shot 10 years ago. Yeah, that's true. It's 10 years ago. Oh, we're old. So it was like how Mike and I really became friends was in writing this. Like we were really cool before, but writing Hot Shot really opened up some things for us to kind of, become closer. He's one of my best mates in the world now. But so there's a lot of things that I learned working on Hot Shot that I've now started using under Vantage In-House. So those are the things that I push and do on a regular basis. A couple of other things that I've done is the Origins Unknown series, and this one, The Villain. So the first thing that I kind of want to get into is the idea versus story. One of the funniest things that I come across all the time are people that have like this amazing idea, and they're like, yes, it's ready to go, let's do something. And it's like, yeah, but what's the story? And it's like, well, it's this idea. And I'm like, that's not a story. It's, this guy has this power, and this is the thing that he fights. But what's the story? It's like, no, that's it. It's like, no, you've got to have more than that. And that's one of the things that I had to learn over the last few years was, why do you need more than that? What I personally found is having, it fleshed out, you see more. You know what it's going to take to tell this story, both in terms of time, space, money, everything. Have you guys had any instances where you've got this idea, but you're not necessarily sure of the story, and maybe you've tried to tell the story anyway, and it didn't quite work out? Is anybody
11th grade.
11th grade? Hey, that's...
I actually published it too.
Did you really? How big was it?
So 3 issues.
Oh, that's not bad. Was it like 3 sequential issues or 3 of 1 issue?
2 of the first issue and 1 of the second.
Okay, that's still not bad. That's still not bad. That's actually farther along than I would have gotten with just an idea, because I'm terrible at that. Has anybody else had that happen? Where you just got like a solid idea and you're like, I'm gonna make it work. Well, you guys are already ahead of the game, because I can tell you, there are so many people that are like, yeah, it's awesome guy, and he does this awesome thing. And it's like, well, what's the story? I don't know, but it's gonna be awesome. And you're like, all right, let's see how you get along with that one. As a writer, predominantly, that's one of my rules. If I have an awesome idea, that's cool. I will back burner that until a story comes out. Let's see, which one can I show you first? Origins Unknown was an idea for years. I mean, we're talking, I think, Wizard World, Chicago, 2004. I'm telling an editor about this idea that I had. Didn't come out with it until about 2 years ago. But the idea was a series of short stories, 3 of them, interconnected, first acts. That's all. Person finds out something about themselves, and it just kind of, cuts it off. Big cliffhanger style. That was the idea. Didn't really have stories though. Like it was just, little piece in the wind. Until I had the story, would not touch it. That's for most of these things. I mean, I sat on these things, dare I say, almost 10 years because I didn't have a story. The Trouble with Love, this actually came about from a goofy idea. I was working at American Eagle in 2000. It was a Sunday, it was slow, so I was able to, kind of think about some ideas, and I just thought, the trouble with love is you can't punch it in the face. That was a line, that was the line, that was the idea for The Trouble with Love, and it sat in my head from the year 2000 until this book came out, well, at least until I sat down and started writing it, which was early 2011. So, there's a lot of times where you'll get an idea and you'll feel like you need to do it really quickly for fear that somebody else might tell that story or what have you. Definitely not something I would suggest. Definitely find your story more so than have the idea. Ideas are great. Everybody has ideas. It's not really the matter of originality so much anymore, or rather than execution. That's a big deal. Are you guys fans of mainstream books at all? Yes? Okay. That'll work out. Have you guys read Marvel's Secret Invasion series? Came out a few years ago. Yeah, it was kind of mixed bag. I mean, there's parts that I liked, there's parts I was like, ugh. How many of you guys ever read Astro City? You read Astro City? A couple? Astro City first played out the Secret Invasion storyline. Like, literal whole aspects of the whole arc of Secret Invasion is in a small arc in Astro City, and it's literally the same thing. We were talking aliens have perpetrated being superheroes, they're shapeshifters, people don't know, this one guy who's basically Batman finds out, and he's like, the whole arc is him kind of defending himself about some things, but then revealing this secret invasion that has happened. And it is literally, like if you read the two, you're kind of like, wow, this is somebody stole from someone else. But I mean, you've got two major publishers, what do you do? But I think the actual execution was drawn out a little better with Secret Invasion than it was with Astro City, because it was just kind of a little backdrop, little piece of story idea, nothing really major. But
I tell Busick that.
Oh, no. I'm sure Busick went into some serious stuff, because I've even asked him if he got paid for Secret Invasion because it was so close. And he was like, I can't speak on that. I was like, that's very diplomatic. Yes, you did. But, I mean, it's cool that way. But, it was one of those things where I think for Busick, what it was this was an idea. He didn't really have that whole story, so he didn't focus on telling that story. It was just a simple idea that fit into the context of the story he was already telling. And then you have, Bendis, who saw this and just crafted a whole story out of it.
Well, Bendis can take a picture and work it into a year-long story.
Absolutely. Whether you want him to or not, he can draw that bad boy out. But yeah, I think that's
Spider-Man in the first series. Ultimate Spider-Man. How long did it take him to kill off Uncle Ben?
Was that
6 issue?
Was it 6? I was gonna say, I know you would know. 6 was it?
About 6 issues. It took
How did you feel about that? Stretching out that idea of Uncle Ben.
It didn't bother me because I never got to read the original Spider-Man stories, so I didn't get that. I'm going to the comic store this week to read my old Amazing Spider-Man and find out what happened. Like, I got that experience now with Ultimate Spider-Man. I got to get attached to Uncle Ben. I got to get attached to
So then it actually mattered to you when he died.
So it mattered to me when he died.
Actually, I agree with him.
Okay.
I liked it.
I like that.
Some of them, no.
Some of them, no. One of the other things that you'll find out when you go from the idea to the story is what style of comic books you're going to tell. If you've gone around in Space was last weekend if anybody went, it's the Small Press and Alternative Comics Expo. It's a great spot for indie comics. Over the last year or so though, I've actually had to do an examination of what it means to be indie. My books kind of are very different than the books that are really popular at Space. They do have a very indie feel, which is kind of weird. So the way I've kind of broken it down is indie, I-N-D-I-E versus I-N-D-Y. The I-Eers are the ones that are kind of looser in style, looser in their storytelling. They can be a little more graphic, a little more, the best way I can call it is a little more rock and roll about it. It's kind of, I got it out there. Cerebus is definitely one.
The Turtles used to be.
Turtles definitely used to be. There's a grittiness to it. It's not necessarily as refined. It's just raw telling a story. You want to tell it, there you go, you put it out there. And that can fit into a lot of different ways. One of them is possibly how you actually produce the book itself. We call these ash cans, real simple. put it out there, go to Kinko's, run a couple off. Here is a more professional, quote-unquote, version of the same story. This one would probably fly far more at space than this one would. This one is a little too polished. It's a little too clean, too mainstream oriented. It doesn't really work in that particular environment. This is definitely an INDY book. Something where, as I look at it, it's more about being small press as opposed to mainstream. And those are things that you kind of have to understand. If your books in their execution are going to be more small press, you have a better chance of getting them into comic shops. You know, comic shops, they have to have, you know, a visual, marketability in order to move them. You're talking about characters that you've created that, you know, are near and dear to your heart, but you've got books like Marvel's, you know, Spider-Man, DC's Batman, Superman, that their books don't always move. So how do you expect your books to move? All those things play into it. So you really have to think about what that's going to do, you know, with your whole style. Are you going to aim to just kind of, you know, rock something out, or do you want it to be very specific? Do you want it to be something that is marketable on this level, may keep you out of, you know, another context or what have you? If you go for the more indie IE style, is a comic shop your main place that you want to get your book into? Not to, you know, throw out anybody, you know, crazy or anything like that, but one of my friends, Ken Epstein, he does Nick's Comics. His stuff is very, very indie, i.e. it's very cool. I can see him flying off the shelves at record shops. Like, I've seen it. Like, people will have, you know, open spaces. Nick's Comics was here, gone now. Here at a regular shop, not necessarily the case. They're not, you know, as action oriented. They're not as superhero oriented. Very pulpish. So it's a little slower to move at your, you know, commonplace comic shop. So those are things to consider. Though he's got, you know, full color books, they are, you know, the same size as mine. Just stylistically, there's a big difference, world of difference, and those are things that you'll have to, you know, figure out at that idea versus story stage. How do you want this book to look? It's complicated. You know, a lot of people think that, you know, I can just sit down and start making comics. There's so much more to think about than that. It's ridiculous. But that's just one of those weird, interesting things to do. Have you guys had any, you know, interesting feedbacks on that? Like where maybe your book was, if you made one that it got a certain feedback or vibe because of how it looked, where it didn't look or did look like a mainstream title? Have you guys ever gotten that?
Not from mainstream, just 11th grade one.
Okay, okay.
They told me that don't quit my day job.
They always say that in 11th grade. They never give you that full-on, like, yes, you can do it unless you're Joe Mad.
Actually, my teachers encouraged me.
That's good. That's good, but that's very, very rare.
It was the students that told me not to quit my day
Oh,
job.
see? Mike, what you got?
I was going to say, I noticed that over years, you know, working with you and going to shops and going to conventions, that my book is more indie, with the Y indie, versus IE. And I think that has to do with the fact that the type of comic books you and I like, working on the books, and wanting to make Spider-Man type books and things like that. And it's not to knock anyone's art, it's just a different style. How do you say, someone just wants to put out a story, they get a couple people together, they make that story, they put it out, and they're fine with that. But then when you have the indie books, I think of, when you say indie, I make me think of Invincible.
Right.
I want my book to be able to stand next to Invincible, so it's not just about a matter of the artwork, but like you said, it's the presentation. Who's printing your book? What type of paper are you printing on your book? What colors are you using? How's the text? How are the graphics? How are you placing the logos on the book? And I think with IE, and you're not really just thinking about it. You're just thinking, hey, book, cover, draw it, get it out. Here it goes, print it. But then with indie, with the Y indie, you're thinking about that whole production, like Danny Cooper, who was over Meet the Cactus. He's done the letters for several of my books, and Victor's done the letters for several of the books. And then I had Carrie Kelly, who's over Red Hand Studios, Dandridge Jr, has done letters for the book. And I look at what they've done with the letters of these books, and I'm like, I would have never thought to do the text in the way that they do it. Like, each of them have a different way of doing it, and they're all good. They all solve the formula. And then I looked at when I did the letters, I was just throwing word balloons and trying to make it fit. Like,
just put it in there.
And that part of the indie or mainstream books has become an art that a lot of people don't notice is the text. It's just as important because if your eyes get distracted from it, you know, you've been taken out of the book.
Right. Right, and that's a very, very truism, to the point where now I look at mainstream books and I kind of get a little judgy if the text is a little funky. I'm like, hey, why'd y'all do that? Like, you got paid for that? You know. But no, Mike makes a great point. It was something that, like, working on Hotshot actually brought some of this stuff to the forefront of my mind because I never thought about it. We were at Champion City in Springfield. This was a few years ago, and one of the guys that had read our book pulled me aside and he said, you know, I'm really surprised by the quality of this book. And I'm like, why? He says, well, it's, number one, it's a superhero book. And I'm like, I like superhero comics. Like, I don't understand. Like, what's the question? He says, well, most indie guys don't do that. And I'm like, what do you mean they don't do that? And he's like, well, like, this is mainstream stuff. Like, you're tapping into mainstream stuff, but you're an indie guy. And it was like, isn't that what I'm supposed to do? You know, it was something that was really shocking on the notion that, you know, as an indie person, I'm not supposed to touch the mainstream. I'm not supposed to, you know, lean that way at all. But it's what drew me into making comics, what got me wanting to make comics. It's the type of comics I wish to make. So why would my work not be something like that? But that was something that kind of gave me my first clues that there is a separation. And then you always had the mainstream versus indie, you know, critiques, you know, where the indies are the smart guys. They're the ones that they don't need the capes, they don't need the muscles. You know, their stories are smarter. And you've got the stupid commercial, you know, aspects of the mainstream where it's, you know, oh, I'm gonna punch you, but it's full color and it's awesome. So, you know, we were able to kind of tote that line to challenge both aspects, where it's like, well, no, this is actually pretty smart, but it is more of a mainstream style book. We were pretty good with that, and it's something I think has grown in its practice. You know, the more people have gotten into the more mainstream things, but still found the venues of higher form, higher production indie making, you're going to see more of that line being toted, where it's not just about being clever, and it's not just about, you know, high octane action and colors. You can do both, which again I think Invincible is definitely a great example, though it still kind of fits in that mainstream line because it's published through Image Comics, which always kind of nicely totes that line of commerciality.
I was going to say, before you go to the next subject, another thing, because, yeah, I do remember saying that, another thing that separates the indie with the Y and the IE is the fact that they were surprised at our book, which is a good thing, and then I ended up dropping the ball, and I'm trying to get that ball picked back up, is that our book came out consistently every other month. And that was another one that comes like, indie books don't come out regular issues. Or like when we have in our book, or we have in the book, Seat issue 1.
Right.
Because most IE books would just have a 1 issue or 2 issue story and just be done with it.
Right.
Or a 1 issue story and be done with it.
You might not be able to keep going
right,
for whatever reason.
Right.
Right.
And we set a goal to put out a whole team specifically for this, and we went into it with a mindset of we want our books to be on the level that Marvel Comics, DC Comics, and Image Comics are, but we don't want any of the shenanigans that they have with it.
Well, they don't hire Kevin Smith.
What? You don't like Kevin Smith?
Oh, I love his work.
I was gonna say, I love Kevin Smith.
I love his work. I told you, it's just 2 years later he finishes the story.
Okay, well, yeah, that is pretty bad. That's bad practice. That's bad practice. Shame on you, Kevin. Shame. But no, going into the production aspect of things brings up the next subject, which is know your budget. That's an interesting thing that I think not a lot of people think about. Also, when it comes to making anything, you know, it's I want to, and then you get bombarded with the notions of how much it actually costs to be creative. I think one of the first things that you really have to know is how much money you have to spend on a project. Like, that's very important. I know me personally, when I get into a situation where I'm going to make a book, I have a set amount of money that I'm willing to pay the creative side. I have a set amount that I'm aiming to spend when it comes to actually making the book. Because you actually have to think about that in all those ways. You can have the product, and that can definitely put you in a certain, you know, debt. And you definitely want to make that back. So you have to think that you have to spend even more in order to make it back, because you have to have product in order to, you know, sell it. So those are things to definitely think about. When you're doing that stuff, you know, when you're figuring out how much, you know, you have to spend, those are the times when you can actually think about how you're going to make this book. whether it's going to be an actual physical copy, whether it's going to be an e-reader, all those different aspects come into play based on your budget. Have you guys had situations where you've wanted to do something grandiose or really big, and you looked at your wallet and was like, let's dumb it down a little bit, because you couldn't necessarily afford to make it, you know, that big? Have you guys come across that one? You come across that one?
Quite a bit, actually. When I've been doing a comic for an Australian company for a while, and at first it was like everyone's like, I want to be able to some of my income and actually make money off this, so I have to charge you a certain amount to do it. And originally I was like, oh, let's do $200. Okay, it's fine because I'm doing the lettering, the ink, and the coloring, all that crap. He's like, well, that's not really what I was looking at. I was like, well, what are you kind of looking at? Around $100. Oh God. That's lines. That's nothing else because it takes me time. It takes energy to do all this, and I'm not nearly making enough to live as a functioning adult. So we hashed it out. It's still not that great, but it's yeah. There's you have to kind of like you have to play it back like how much time I'm willing to spend on the coloring if I'm gonna do it at all, that sort of thing.
That is that's definitely something that is an issue. We're gonna get to that one because that's a very interesting aspect that we will talk about in just a minute. Anyone else have any aspects where you wanted to necessarily have like a book, but you end up having to go webcomic? Yes, sir.
Right now, we're finishing up a comic book, and going to printing is the biggest cost right now. I'm trying to find other routes besides
Gotcha.
the printing routes that actually make this profitable.
Okay. It's now when you say profitable, is it a matter of
Breaking even at least.
Gotcha. My very first book that I did solo was a book called Omnibus, and Omnibus came about when there was a panel in the 2009 Mid-Ohio show, and it was an indie comics panel, and there were people talking about what it took to make comics, and I didn't like what they said. The predominant voice was negative, talking about how expensive it was, and it really annoyed me because I kind of figured myself rather clever at the time, that I had come up with a way to make a comic and it be immediately profitable, like immediately. And I'm like, come on, like I can't be the only one who figured this out, but apparently I was at the time. Basically, what I had done was found that there's a site called Kablam. Have you guys heard of Kablam? Everybody heard of Kablam? Yeah. Kablam is a print-on-demand site for anyone that does not know. And when they came into the game for comic book production, it changed a lot because what they allowed for was, differences of quantities. You didn't have to spend, gobs of money in order to, get your book made. You can spend a little bit, whatever you needed in order to do this. The other thing that they allowed was they had a sister site called Indie Planet. Again, Indie with a Y, which I thought was kind of like, that would sell your stuff for you. They would just deduct the cost of printing and then send you the difference. So I'm like, okay, so here's the thing. If you make your own book, say you're the guy, you do the writing, the art, the lettering, everything. You do it all. So it's no, outside expenditure. What you do is you upload it onto Kablam, and at the time, there was no, you didn't have to pay to get approved at the time. You do now. But, back then, you could just upload it and mark it for sale through Indie Planet. So you literally could make a book, load it. If it sells one copy on Indie Planet, you've now made instant profitability. It didn't cost you anything. I've had people argue, like, well, what about the time it took you to draw it? Well, this is my book, so I would be drawing anyway. So what else would what else am I supposed to be doing? This is something I'm doing for myself. I'd still be drawing, this is just me taking my quote-unquote practice and then getting paid for it, So this was something that I wrote as an article. It was published on Comic Related. I actually had some people that weren't happy with me saying so. They're like, you don't know what you're talking about. This is tried and true practices, I'm like, hey, it might be tried and true, but that doesn't mean that it has to sustain. You're just preaching old ideas to new audiences. Think outside the box. Like the whole point that we do this is to be creative. How are you not being creative about how we do it in that same vein? So one of the persons that was on that panel was like, well, show us. Do it. And I was like, all right, well, don't mind if I do then. So basically what I did was I took $5, went to Staples, did some sketch cards. They were basically 8.5 by 11 sheets on cardstock cut in half. I knew what the project was gonna be, so I printed up some info on the back about it, you know, just kind of a little blurb. Set up at a movie theater. You know, this was one of the things that we used to do back in the day. We would go to a movie theater when a comic book movie came out. People are there. You know, people are like, oh, comics, I'm gonna go see a movie about it. So I'm doing sketches. Pow! I raised $55 in about 6 hours. So it wasn't, you know, huge returns or anything like that, but it was enough. It was enough to make back my 5, take that $50, go to Kablam, and order 20 comics. It was a full color, 24-page book. I was able to get it within a month, because that's the turnaround time for Kablam when you do a new book. And I took those 20 copies and gave them to comic shops around the city. Didn't charge them, didn't need to. You know, the whole idea was, I didn't spend any money on this, so I'm just gonna give it to you. If you sell it and it moves for you and you know turn around and like, hey, I need some more. Okay, now you gotta pay for it. Because obviously I've made you some money, now you gotta make me some money. But any of the ones that sold online, instant profitability. I think I sold 4 and I was top dog right there. You know, I mean, I think overall I made maybe $5 profit, but it's pure profit. Like, no aspect of it was I in the black. That's a big deal. You know, for us, like you were saying, breaking even, that's hard. That's very, very hard. But here was a way to go about making comics that allowed me to do not just break even, but go even further. So it was all in a matter of thinking about it. One of the things I didn't do very well was I didn't market it very well. So I could have possibly made even more money, but I didn't market it very well. I didn't think about, you know, what sort of means of marketing, you know, I could do, and that's definitely something that you want to think about in the budget planning for this. You know, how much money can you devote to marketing ideas, and also still being creative about that. Whether that's, you know, some posters, handouts, flyers. Kablam is one. I love Kablam. They actually have, I think, flyers or posters. I can't remember what they call them, but full color, dual-sided. You get 100 of them for 15 bucks. Now, depending on how you do things, you can take that and turn it into something amazing. So I think if you go to Kinko's, Staples, something like that, to get 100 of anything printed, it's usually, especially full color, it's going to be like somewhere around 50 to 99 cents a side. So this obviously kills that. I've personally not used it yet, but it's something that you can think of, you know, especially if you design it as a half sheet sort of idea where, okay, yeah, you printed off 100 of them and you send them to me and I'm going to take them, get it cut. So for less than 20 bucks, I've got 200 flyers that I can now send out and promote my stuff. It's all about being, you know, financially smart about your stuff. You know how much money you have. That's important because you can't just generate extra. It doesn't grow on trees quite like that. I wish it did, though. I wish it did. Has anybody else had any interesting marketing plans that they've used to either generate money or successfully promoted their stuff? I was gonna say, we definitely had one.
Yeah.
I got us in trouble a little bit. It was kind of awesome.
No. So, we really like our book, Hot Shot.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
I'm not gonna lie, it's heavily inspired by Naruto, Invincible, Spider-Man.
Yes.
But more so Invincible. I really love that book. And love Robert Kirkman. Love him to death. Just like this book is fabulous. So Victor gets this wild idea.
You gonna blame me? You gonna blame me for that one?
Hold
No,
on,
that's
let me
fair.
get the story out. Let me take note. I don't normally agree with about 40% of Victor's ideas.
55. Don't listen to him. 55%.
So he's like, I'm gonna put it on Image's website, and I'm gonna say, we're gonna take all the books to the store, and we're gonna say, if you buy a copy of Invincible this comic week, you get a copy of Hot Shot free. And we're doing that because, not because we think we're better than Invincible, but we think our book is just as good. If you like Invincible, you're gonna like our book because it's the same type of comic book, same style, same type of story. The only difference is our main character is black, and he's in Columbus, Ohio.
I mean, it's not like directly a rip of
Yeah, it's not
Invincible.
good. Yeah, but I'm saying big point.
Don't sell it like
Yeah,
that.
you know,
It's Invincible.
It's,
for black
it's
people.
black Invincible. You know what I'm saying? It's black Invincible. It's
Sackable.
Yeah.
But, you know, we think the basic subplot idea is like, hey, you'll be able to relate and you might like it. Give it a try. We put this on Image's website, and I was like, you know, nothing's gonna happen. No one's gonna buy it. And all of a sudden, Eric Larson starts responding to the post.
Wait. Does anybody not know who Eric Larson is? as great as possible.
Savage Dragon.
Yes, he did do Spider-Man. He is
One
the
of the
creator of Savage
co-founders.
Dragon, co-founder of Image Comics. Yeah.
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 So he starts responding to our post, and it's like,
He's not happy with us.
not at all.
Not happy with us.
And he's just ripping on us. Like, what the hell do you think you're doing?
Yeah.
Your
Like he
book-
did kind of get at us.
Like, he just like, this book is, you guys shouldn't be doing this. This book is not of quality of an Image comic book. And like, me and Victor both in the most positive voice, no cap locks or anything. And we're like, we're not saying our book is better. We're saying we respect you guys. We respect Invincible. We're trying to do the same thing you're doing at Image. We just think if you like Invincible, chances are you're gonna like reading our book as well. Yeah, so I'm thinking, good job, Mike. That's a grown-up response.
Yes.
That's a positive response. Victor drops facts on his. You know, I'm more the opinion guy. Victor drops the facts, and we're like, we did good. We high-five each other. Yes, our first big compliment. No, Eric Larson is apparently petty. It comes on with his very next post like, you guys aren't, and I quote, this is what Eric Larson said to a person who said they are a fan of your company and your book.
How dare you?
This is what he said. You're not in the ballpark of Invincible. A matter of fact, you're not even in the same city that the ballpark is in.
Yes.
When was this?
This was 2009, summer 2009 or so.
Oh, he and I got into it then.
Did you? Oh, so he was getting at everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, he was getting at everybody. Well, okay, so what the thing was for us was, marketing-wise, it was a fairly expensive deal for us. We were giving free books away. So, I mean, you figure however many books we might have given to any given shop at the time, that was just straight coming out of our pocket. Mike Spike, because I wouldn't pay any of that. So I ain't gonna lie about that. He was publisher. I was like, yeah, you go ahead and handle that. I got this idea. You pay for it though. But the idea was we were going to go around to everyone who had Invincible on their pull list. If you had Invincible on your pull list, you got a free copy of Hotshot #1. The idea was if you read it, you would like it. You go back to your comic shop and be like, hey, this was actually pretty good. You know, I want to read some more of this. It was a two-part, marketing plan. It was Dare to Compare. That's what we called it. And then the other one was going to be Dare to Share. If you didn't like what we did, or you felt like we could grow, tell us what to do. We're going to put it out there, but we want to hear from you to know what we can do. But the bottom line was, it was going to get our names on the map, our work on the map. People were going to talk about it. That was the plan. Not to be like, yeah, take that, Invincible. No, far from that. Like, we still are humbly, like, idly worshiping Kirkman, Otley, Corey Walker, the whole nine. So, mind you, Corey Walker, he did come on at the time and say that it was cool, that, what we did. He was like, I appreciate that. He's like, these guys think that they're good enough, then more power to them. And I was like, I don't know if that really was like, no, go ahead and do it. Or just like, look what these guys doing. It's ridiculous. They think they can do it. No. But I mean, he was still cool about it. The point that I made to Larson, though, was it was factual. We're putting our book out same way that they're putting their book out. We get our books on the comic book shop shelves just like they do. In fact, Invincible, Hotshot, HI, they're going to be right next to each other, chances are. So what we're outright saying is you can compare our book to your book. It's no different than what is subliminally said when we have it on the same shelf. Because when it comes down to it, there's a limited amount of money anybody's going to spend on a comic book Wednesday. They look, here's Invincible, here's Hotshot. They're going to make a choice. So you can quietly say it, hey, we're going to fight for the same dollars, or you can openly say it. We decided to openly say it. Like, we stand behind our work. We're aiming to grow. No matter what, let's do it. The part that really got us was Eric was like, you know what? We're not going to play the bully yard, kind of thing. We're not going to shut this post down. But after we made that kind of argument, he definitely shut the post down, which was like, we kind of won, But, it was kind of like, we shut him up. He couldn't say nothing. But at the same time, it definitely kind of hurt us in some regards. People are like, you guys are the ones that compared yourself to Invincible. We're like, we were just trying. We didn't get to part 2 for the whole share aspect. So it was definitely one where, as a marketing plan, kind of fun, kind of interesting, definitely got some notice. I don't think it was too expensive. How many books did we?
Too expensive.
I was gonna say I didn't think we.
I only got like 50 or 60 books printed.
Yeah, so it wasn't that bad.
And we didn't get the results that we wanted. The side results that we did get is that Pack Rat Comics love us. Dave's Clubhouse loves us. I got people like this one guy named Josh who really did compare and shared it. And like I've heard this guy rip books apart all day and every day in the comic book shop. And then he takes our book, and then like I see him at the movies, he's like, dude, that book is really freaking good. Not that I'm hyping or anything.
I mean, yeah, but read that though. Read that. Issue 6 comes out next week.
But like, we got people coming up and saying it, and one of the things that people liked about us online in the indie community is that we were open to suggestions. Like we want, like our whole thing is we want to improve, we want our book to be better. How else do we know to make the book better if we don't put it in your hands and ask you for your feedback?
Right.
And people were giving us feedback. And like they saw us improve over the issues that came out.
Which is always good. Never be afraid to improve. That's one of those things where sometimes you have to put out crap in order to have a standing for yourself to move up from. If you even look back at old Invincible issues, Oddly has gone through a huge change in his art style, art execution. Some of it good, some of it bad, depends on how you feel, but he's still evolving, and that's the thing that is important for us to get out there. One thing that he's guilty of immensely was he would do some pages, and then he'd do some more pages and be like, oh, these pages are so much better than those pages, then we got to start all over again. I'm like, really? That's what we do? Like, we're never going to get this book out if you keep doing that. He did it for like 2 years. It was ridiculous. That happens. So next thing is looking for collaborators. When I did the omnibus book, one of the first things that anybody that was really smart came back at me was like, well, that wouldn't work if you were working with somebody. The whole way that you put this together, it would not work that way. You wouldn't make immediate money if you're working with someone. And I'm like, you know what? That's fair. It's absolutely fair. And they're right. It wouldn't. To answer that, I did this book called Doing a Bid. Doing a bid is kind of an interesting thing. I know a couple of you guys are predominantly artists in the audience right now. There is a sincere issue once you go on the other side as writer / publisher that we have with you guys. And I'm going to put it like this, like I'm speaking for the number of artists that are, or the writers that are out there. Here's the thing that we understand that doesn't always come across from you, that that we have this simpatico. Like you were saying, you wanted to be able to supplement and live off of this. We're the wrong market. We are the absolute worst possible market possible to do that. We're called small press for a reason. The whole notion is we can only make so much product. If we can only make so much product which gives us our money back, then we can't afford to pay you that much. Like, it's not possible. It's one of those things where what the habit has become is you want to earn a professional status. So your idea is to, as early as possible, act like a professional. Professionals get page rates. There's a reason for that. There's nothing wrong with you feeling that way. That's actually smart on your part. How else do you expect to get treated as a professional if you don't act like one? The only problem is, you can only do that to other professionals. We can't do that. So that's one of the biggest problems that we'll ever come across. So like for me personally, one of the things that I am 100% about is I'll tell you how much money I can pay you on any job. It's not, I will never ask you what your page rate is. I can't, because your page rate does not dictate what I've got. I'd rather tell you what I've got, and you can decide whether or not that's something you can work with. Or dare I even say, as I mentioned in this book, what should happen as you guys are artists, because part of this is building your skills to get to that level where you go to the mainstream guys and you go, I want this much a page because I can do this much work. I'm not going in there handing you a portfolio, I'm handing you books that I've done. You want to see about me? Boom, read this. Here's my catalog, here's my library. If you don't like, well, I don't really like your work, that's cool. This guy gave me $3 for it. So you don't have to like it, you're still paying me. And once you keep getting paid, it doesn't matter if the mainstream editor doesn't like your work, so much. If it's moving, he likes it. He likes it. That's the bottom line, because this is business, So be like a construction worker. That's the idea that you guys should have. If somebody comes to you and says, okay, here's how much money I have to do this, and you say, okay, I can tell your story in this many pages, and it'll take me this long to do it. Now, this guy, it's his job to go back and write the story per the specifications that you've just given. It's kind of like, okay, it's a little backwards. You know, definitely most people have a script already, you know, and they're like, I want you to do this. Well, you've already laid out all this stuff, so then you kind of, you know, it is kind of up to you to have that power structure and say, okay, well, you want me to do exactly this, then I need this much money to do it. But otherwise, if you're catching somebody, you know, who is willing to work with you, you tell them, okay, this is an interesting story, I kind of like it, I can do it in 20 pages and it'll cost you this much. Or I can do it in, you know, 40 pages, but it'll cost you this much. You know, you can give ranges, you can do, you know, whatever, but you're the visual storyteller, that's your job. So, you know, use that to your advantage, but it also allows for you to work with a small press guy, you know, more effectively. The other thing, of course, is to be flexible. From our end of things, one of the worst things ever that I've learned, I've never actually offered it to anybody, is back-end pay. I've never offered that to anybody because I've never found it to be very lucrative as a concept. It's like, I don't get royalty checks like that. Like, I don't expect to be able to pay you any. Like, no. And it's also one of those little, it can be a dirty trick. You know, I'll pay you back end profits. Well, if I don't ever, you know, break even, then there are no back end profits. Like, I'm still getting money, but I don't owe you anything because, oh no, I still owe this much, so I can't pay you. And then it can be something that just keeps cycling on because every time I do a second run of books, I technically owe more money. It's not necessarily a nice thing. So back in, you know, deals, they're fine to a degree, but not something that I definitely push. But it's also about knowing like what sort of things are in your favor as artists. One of the key things for me is you own the artwork. Technically speaking, what we would have is a work for hire agreement. It's my idea, I'm hiring you, it's as a commission, not necessarily offering ownership, so it's definitely a work for hire agreement. But I can't pay you that much. So I would much rather let you own the artwork and say, God forbid, that this story, you know, breaks out and it's this big, huge success and you're sitting on all this artwork and you can turn around and you can sell it for a higher profit than what I paid you to do it. That's in your best interest, you know? It's your work. Get paid for it. Literally, twice. You know, this is one of those few times where you can get paid multiple times for something and it's not a bad thing. You know, say worst case scenario is we do a book together and I only pay you $10 a page. It's a 100-page book, right? That's not a lot, not at all. I understand that, I'm sorry, I'm a little broke, can't afford it. But say you turn around and there are pages that your flat rate is $30 a page if you sell the artwork. Maybe there are some that are like really dynamic, really cool, so you bump those up 50 to $70 a page. You've actually made so much more on this book than I could pay you. And it works out, you know, it works out better. You're not slaving away for no reason. You can repurpose that work to suit your needs. You know, that's important. But it's all, you know, really what this is about is kind of changing the game, letting everybody kind of meet in the middle. Comics are a visual medium, absolutely. So to a degree, the artists do have a lot of power. The only problem is that we're storytellers. As writers, we're choosing to tell comic stories. We don't have to. We can tell a story in prose novel form, and then you're still out of a job. So we can still do it without you, but you can't do it without us. But in order for us to do this particular thing, we need you. So it's a matter of trying to find a better way to work together so that we both win, you know. And that one of the other things that I offer, because again, I don't disclude back-end payments, I just don't offer it that often because it's not necessarily worth it. But percentage of ownership is another big one. I want you to have some ownership of the projects that we work on. I don't want you to just be somebody that I hired. I want you to talk about it. I want you to promote it. I want you to feel comfortable living about this thing. You know, it's your name on it too. So, you know, if this goes from this little meager little piece of 8-page something into a big screen adaptation, you're getting paid because I want you to. You know, I wouldn't be able to have that venue open to me if not for you, because this is a collaborative measure. So that's important. You know, those are things that should definitely happen. Have you guys had any instances of trying to find interesting new ways to pay people or being paid? Have you guys come across any of those? What you got?
Using contract, basically half up front.
Okay.
So if I'm being like, freelance for a job, illustrate, a comic book or a logo or any graphics of sorts, I use a contract. So usually there's like a website called marketability.com. You can sign up for free and then just get like a quick contract, either a deal contract that's not binding so you can actually cut it off and you don't feel like you're not ready to like go with the project or you don't have enough time. Or if you have too many projects on your hands, and then just like export it as a PDF or a Word format, and then just like design it yourself, just use the same text, and just kind of like change it.
That's awesome.
But, what I've done is, I've asked, when I've been freelancing, I would have them sign my contract, and then I request that you pay half up front, and then once you get the job done, the other half is paid.
That's very conducive, very conducive. Now, you brought up contracts, which I think is a fantastic thing. You guys often work in contracts? That's always good. Even on the small press side of things, I can't remember where I heard it, but contracts are how do they put it? It's not to suggest that things will go wrong. It's to make sure we know what happens just in case they do. So it basically stipulates what everybody's rights are, what everybody's expectations are, and it allows for everybody to be on this even plane so we all know what exactly we're supposed to be doing. So I think that's a great plan. What was that website again?
Rocket Lawyer.
Rocketlawyer.com? Yeah, that's definitely what I'm going to be looking at because I think that's a genius thing. The Trouble with Love is one that I did that on. I paid the penciler and inker, Harold Edge. I paid him half up front, half in the end. It was what? No, let me say that again. I paid him half up front, and then before he was actually finished, I gave him the other half. But the idea was, the payment up front was letting him know I was serious about this job. I definitely wanted him on it, and it's not something where it's like, well, maybe, well, this came up. I didn't want to do that. So I had it, boom, give it to him, quick. That definitely is a great plan. Has anybody else had any other instances of being paid in different ways?
Mine was pretty much similar to his.
Okay.
To a point where it's just like, if I can get to the line work, give me half of the page, and then once I get the coloring and the lettering done, the other half.
Okay, so but you still did it based on page rate.
Basically, I just split it up.
Okay. Yeah, I did the big job of it. Basically the whole sum that I was gonna pay him, gave him half here, and then the other half as the work went on. What you got?
I've done it several ways. I don't know, we've had several debates on it. I just completed my staffing for Freestyle Comics, which I'm very happy about. And in my emails to them, because actually about half of the people that I work with are like in Spain, Mexico, Argentina.
You're doing an international farm out.
Yeah.
I like that. Outsourcing. He's the reason why we don't have jobs here in America. No, I'm teasing.
And but they're the ones that accepted my rates. I
For non,
pulled
Exactly.
I pulled the Victor Dandridge, and I said I had to look at I had to look at what I would be willing to accept for a payment, and summarize that. Like I broke it down by lines, lines, inks, colors, and letters. Looked at what I'd be willing to accept, and then try to and I cut into that because I've got about 10 people on my staff now, so I gotta be able to afford to pay all these people when they start producing work for me. And I sent it to them in a clear, straightforward letter. And I said, in my letter at the beginning, I said, now look, I appreciate you. I respect your craft and I respect your talent. I am an artist also. But in order to get paid for work, you got to have work.
That's right.
You can't that's one of my quotes I always like, you can't demand being paid a certain page rate when you don't have anything to show that you can do it.
Oh man, if I can jump on that one right quick fast.
Usyk actually says that on his page too.
Does he? That's
Pretty
genius. That is a genius statement. I actually encountered an artist. I will be as pronoun open as I possibly can, so I do not point this person out. But I met them at a show, and I liked what they did a lot. I was like, look, I like what you got, just in seeing illustrations. I said, I will offer you this much for a job. Now, in the context of the conversation, the question was, have you ever done a book before? I said, no, they just graduated from art school. I said, okay, cool. Look, I like this. I really do. I'm gonna offer you this much to do a job. Oh, I can't do a book for anything less than, $1,500. You've never done a book before. How do you know what you can do a book for? You ain't never done it. I didn't even understand this. You know, I'm like, not for nothing, but let's check our comic book resumes. I've got this book, this book, this book. You should be paying me in order to get on my name, because I don't even know who you are. So it was one of those things where that right there is like, yeah, oh no, I can't. Okay, see, I will never work with you. And I immediately shut it down. I was like, nope, never mind. Well, wait, maybe we can work something out. Nope, we just did. And the answer that we worked out was no.
That's why I stopped doing page rates.
I mean, it's conducive. Yes. Now, for myself, I have offered very interesting things to two of my artists that I've worked with, where it was not about paying them directly. Both Jacob Newell and Ren McKenzie. Jacob does Origins Unknown with me, and Ren does The Samaritan. What I did was I bought them tables at major conventions. It's a very interesting sort of aspect of how to pay somebody. It could be cheaper, however, what that also implies is a matter or a measure of trust in your ability to make your money. You know, if I give you the venue, how much money can you make off of it? I think that's a very interesting statement. That's one that's very challenging to a lot of artists, but these guys were very conducive to it. You're not guaranteed, but having this space, you know, that's the thing. But if you can't perform for you, how do I expect you to perform for me? You know, if you can't get you money, how do I expect you to bring me money? So, you know, as much as I might, you know, end up paying you to do a book, there's no guarantee of return because you don't even feel like you could get it for yourself. And I don't think there's anybody in this room who will work harder for somebody else than they would for themselves. You know, me included. You know, I'm gonna sit there, oh, what, that's going in my pocket? Oh, I'm gonna do whatever I got, what you need me to do. So, but, you know, if it's for you, I might be like, yeah, I'll do this. That's cool. But yeah, it was an interesting venture. Ren, I think he jumps at that. You know, it's a matter of him being out there. He sees a lot of opportunities, so he relishes in that. Sometimes, you know, if the show is big enough, that's a huge break for him. You know, you're talking shows like New York. That's $500 a table. $500 a table, and you have to submit to be approved for it. Like, I mean, imagine that. Like, you're basically submitting, saying, hey, I'd like to go to your show, and you have to wait. And then if they like you enough to say, okay, yeah, we'll let you be there, now pay us $500. Thank you. So, you know, that's the level. So here is me. I've worked out to have contacts through those shows where I could actually afford to do that. When we did The Samaritan, it was to go to C2E2. That was an interesting one because at the time, and I think it's still their practice now, you can only buy one table per person. So I was attempting to buy two, and they're like, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, one of them was not for me, and they're like, we're gonna have to get back to you. So it was definitely an interesting scenario because I mean, you figure money is money. They're like, 2 tables, cool, cash it. Nope. They're like, we have that many people that want to be here. We can only sell you one at a time. So it was just a matter of me having to orchestrate that I'm actually paying for someone else. It just has to come out of my pocket. So that's why I'm buying it. It took some canoodling, but they ended up agreeing. But that was the thing. Like, you know, I offered that to Ren. What he was able to do there, he did very well. So he was conducive with it. He was fine with it. But again, that's something that's more of a challenge to you as an artist. You know, can you bring yourself that kind of money? Can you make a project like that or a condition like that lucrative for yourself? You know, it feeds into that question of value for your artwork. You know, you tell me your page rate, I would ask you, okay, so when am I getting that back? You know, if you're feeling like you're worth that much, when am I getting it back? Well, I don't know. Well, then how can you say you're worth that much? You know, it's one of those, it's economics. It's one of those hardcore economic questions. If you want me to pay you as an investment to this project, when do I expect to get it back? Can you tell me? If you can't, you have to rethink how you look at your value. But again, if you can tell me that, you know, I'll get it back within 6 months to a year because I'm going to help promote this. I'm going to help do this. That adds to the things that we need as small press guys from you. And then, of course, as your library builds up, when you go to the mainstream, when you move up to a higher plateau in the whole comic book ladder, again, boom, I want $200 a page because I have this much work under my belt and I can do it. So then they're kind of like, well, yeah, look, he can do it. He definitely has proven this much. can't see why we can't argue that. So it becomes beneficial, but it's all about, restructuring how you look at where you are in the stage of things. It's not necessarily about where you personally are, but the people who you're working with, and being better acclimated to dealing with those things with those people. So yeah, that's so important.
I got another way.
Oh, what you got?
I do those small minis. I don't know how many dozen
Right.
of those. I actually pay them in copies of those.
That's not bad. That's not bad either.
I'll make an extra 100.
Right.
I do a print run about 500. I'll give them 100 to 200, and that's their payment for doing the book.
Now, how would you guys feel about that? If you got paid in product, so to speak, and if you move the product, that's your money. Would you feel comfortable with that? I mean, I guess that is a little more, that's closer to back end, but that's still really positive though.
That kind of almost goes back to the fact of what you're saying, that you want the person doing the artwork to be involved and invested in it, and that's a challenge for you personally. When you need money and you're trying to make money, you're going to take any job that you can take to make that money. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you back
But
that
you like
idea,
it, right?
that you think that that's a quality product and you're going to be able to sell it.
Mike, have you ever done a book that you didn't feel 100% on, that you were just doing it because somebody paid you to do it?
I've done a book that I felt negative 100% on, and I've done it because it got me several things financially.
We kind of prostitute out sometimes. It happens. It's kind of bad.
You whore.
I know, it's so bad. It's so bad. So bad. So we do. Physical production and merchandise. This is definitely something that I've had to look at in recent years. You were saying about finding a printer. I am a big fan of finding as many printers as possible and having all of them have some access to my work. You can actually get Vantage in-house books through Kablam/Indie Planet. There's a run through Comics Press, through RA Comics Direct. There are so many different places that you can find my stuff because I don't know which venue will actually be the best for me long term yet. Like, I have no idea. I have no means of really gauging that. Here's the biggest case in point to that. There was a comic publisher, or printer, I'm sorry, icgeeks.com. They were out of Iowa. Fantastic pricing. I mean, we're talking, like, when I first heard about their pricing, a light from heaven shone upon their table in C2E2. Like, I'm not even joking. We're talking 32-page full-color book, $1.85 a copy.
Wow.
Unheard of, right? I mean, you're like, holy grail. Like, the guy tells me, and I like bow down and kiss his foot. Fantastic. Now, if I had taken all my eggs and put it in this one basket, I would be royally flushed screwed right now because the company is gone. I met them just last year. They are now gone. No contact, can't get a hold of anybody. My last point of contact with them was October of last year, right after New York. That was the last time that I talked to them. What I've been told happened was that they got swamped with orders. Their pricing was so good. It was a small team of people that were doing it. They thought they could just do it on the side. They did not realize how hungry the small press comic creators are, how many of us there are, how frequently we have shows, everything. They had no idea. They were like, oh no, this will be fine. Woo! Swamped, had nothing. They went under because they had too much business and no way to actually keep it going. Luckily, I didn't do that. So I didn't pull anything off of Kablam. I didn't pull anything off of elsewhere to where I'd have to re-up it, possibly rebuy, or anything of the sort. I was very fortunate in having that stream there and still allowing for other ones to pop up. I still do it now. I've got a solid lock on a local printer who, I'm thinking it's going to work out really well. He's still kind of like, don't really want to tell anybody. I'm like, okay, I'll play that game. So I'll keep looking just in case, there comes somebody who can match prices up in a way that I can be like, hey, this guy is doing this much business, handle it, let's go to it. Printing is tough. It is the killer of these things. It's why so many people do webcomics. They try to do webcomics to build up their clout, to build up their audience, and then we'll move into physical copies of books. That's not a bad thing. Me personally, I don't like digital books. I like to read it in hand. It's kind of my thing. I was like, I hate
Kill the tree. Kill the tree.
Kill the tree. Kill the tree. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but it's true. I'm a bathroom reader. Is anybody else a bathroom reader? Yeah, kindred spirits. So you can't really have the digital device. It's not the same. You got the one hand. You're trying to. That's just awkward. Let me just have my books. And it's cool. So digital formats.
But you don't have a podium in there to hold your books?
Oh, I never thought about that. You've just changed my life.